Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, sir, for that great introduction. So again, I am Ms. Mafet Mdoklusel from the Department of Education. Currently teaching in Apo Makote National High School and the school's disaster risk reduction and management coordinator. I am your resource speaker for today's lecture. I guess everybody in this platform are all set and ready for the lesson. So let's get started. This is your first lesson for the crowd and crisis management entitled Disaster Risk Reduction and Management. Let me share my screen sa DI. Okay, let's define first what is disaster. So, disaster is a severe event causes damage to infrastructure, economic, social structures, or human health and requires external assistance. Another definition of disaster is a serious disruption of functioning of society causing widespread human, material rather, or environmental losses that exceeds the local capacity to respond and calls for external assistance. In short, disasters are any sudden events or scenarios and happenings that cause damage and loss of life. So, according to the United Nations Department of Humanitarian Affairs, the World Health Organization, and Gunn's Multilingual Dictionary of Disasters Medicine and International Relief, all define disasters as the following. First picture, earthquake. Second, typhoon, bombing. Next is the wildfires. According to them or according to those organizations, disasters are the sudden event that leads to the huge loss of life and property. So we have here the classification of disasters. So the first one is the natural disasters. Next is the man-made disaster and the complex emergencies. Let's discuss first what is a natural disaster. A natural disaster is the event that is caused by unnatural forces of the earth and results in a great damage and loss of life. Furthermore, this category of disasters include those caused by hydrometeorological, geological, and biological hazards. We will discuss further later on about these mga hazards. So let's proceed what is natural disaster. So accordingly, natural disaster are the adverse event that results from the natural process of the earth. So the first adverse event that results from the natural process of the earth is the geophysical. What is geophysical? So these are the hazard originating from solid earth. So the following phenomena that can lead to disasters are the following. The first one is earthquake, volcano eruptions, landslides, or mudslides. The next adverse event is biological. So this is caused by exposure to the living organisms under toxic substances or diseases that they may carry. So the examples are epidemic, infectious disease. So like the COVID-19, the world experienced a dramatic loss of human life and unprecedented challenge to public health, food systems, and the world of work for almost 2 years, right? So even up to this point, we're still wearing our face mask. Kay ato gyapon siyang na-experience ang infectious disease nga which is pandemic na siya this time. So the next one is the meteorological. So relating to the weather conditions, so the samples are the cyclones, storms, and tornadoes. Another is the hydrological. So from the word itself or from the root word of it as hydro means water. So caused by the occurrence of movement and distribution of water on Earth. So the following samples are tsunami, storm surge, flood, and hailstorm. The last one is the climatological. So this is relating to climate. So some samples are heat wave, cold wave, the drought, and the forest fire. So the next one is the man-made disaster. So in this category, disasters result from human actions or technological failures. Human activity has increasingly affected an environment's natural ecology and contributed to the manifestation of disaster. In addition, most of the human activities directly responsible for creating disasters are related to technology or industry rather. Technological advances can have resulting in creating both intentional and intentional disasters. So again, this man-made disaster is a disaster resulting from the human intent and negligence and error. Another definition is human actions or technological failure. So these are the following human-induced or man-made disasters, the technological failures, and technological advances. So we have accidental and intentional man man-made disaster. So from the picture itself, as you can see, is na ang mga different samples of accidental disasters like industrial accident, chemical spill, or fire. The other side of the slides is the intentional disaster. So those are war, crime, terrorist activities. So according to the WHO or the World Health Organization, disasters are situations of disrupted livelihoods and threat to life produced by warfare, civil disturbance, and large-scale movements to people in which any emergency response to be conducted in a difficult political and security movement. And one of the best example is the complex emergencies. So what is this complex emergencies? So the result from the internal or internal conflict can be slow to take effect and can be extended over a long period of time. Always remember, each complex emergency has a different trigger or root cause behind the conflict. Examples are the ethnic, the religious, ideological, or political differences, uprising of a population against repression by an authoritarian government, or food and water shortage. Over time, situations can become more and more complex as conditions change. So these are the following complex emergencies are categorized by first, the extensive violence and loss of life. The second one is the displacement of populations. Third is the widespread of damage to societies and economies. Before we will proceed to some basic terminologies, I would like to give you some key points rather to remember. Always remember that natural or human-induced event become a disaster only if it reaches a scope that is beyond the local capacity to handle the emergency and requires assistance of external organization. So these are the samples of the natural disaster. So from earthquake up to the infectious disease outbreak. So the next column is the technological or human-induced disasters from radiation emergencies, from nuclear blast, up to the bombing or destroying a nuclear reactor. So some of the examples of complex emergencies is war and conflict. So let's proceed now to terminologies. The first one is the hazard. A hazard is something that has potential to harm you or to harm the people. So it is also a source or a situation with a potential for harm in terms of human injury or ill health to damage the property, damage to the environment, or the combination of this. Oftentimes, the hazard by itself might not devastating. Example, a tropical cyclone that occurs in the middle of the ocean is purely a weather event and does not cause any much damage. So the next one is the vulnerabilities. The characteristics and circumstances of a community system or asset that make it susceptible to the damaging effects of a hazard. Examples are poverty, social class, health and nutritional status, and access to health and services, environmental conditions. The next one is the risk. This is the combination of the probability of an event and its negative consequences. Or simply, it is a situation involving exposure to danger. The next one is the capacity. So this is the combination of all our strengths and attributes and resources available within a community, society, or organization that can be used to achieve agreed goals. So let's proceed now to the effects of disasters. Okay, so the first effect of disasters is infrastructure damage. So, infrastructure damage may occur to houses, business centers, hospitals, and transportation services. So, the local health infrastructure may be destroyed, which can disrupt delivery of the routine health services to an effective population, to an affected rather population. So, roads may be damaged, hindering relief efforts, limiting access to needed medical supplies and care. The next effect of disaster is to human or the human impact. So these are the injuries or death are the most immediate effects of disasters on human health. So in the wake of a disaster and the ensuing of infrastructure and societal damage, morbidity rates for a variety of illness may increase. So the loss of loved ones, the social support networks, or displacement can result in a psychosocial problems. So the third one is the environmental hazard. So these are the during natural or human-induced disasters, technological malfunctions may release hazardous materials into the community. As you can see in the pictures, na say mga debris, na yung mga hazards that can harm the environment and the people. So another examples are the toxic chemicals that can release and be dispersed by a strong winds, seismic motion, or rapidly moving water. In addition, disasters resulting in massive structural collapse or dust clouds can cause the release of chemical or biological contaminants such as asbestos or mycotic fungal agents. So aside from the effects of the disaster, we also have disaster-related health effect and public health implications. So several factors that determine the public health effects of a disaster, including the nature and extent of the disaster itself, population density, underlying health and nutritional conditions of the affected population, the level of preparedness, and pre-existing health infrastructure. So we have here the direct and indirect health effects. So the direct rather health effects are the caused by disasters actual physical forces. So the keyword here is the actual cause of the disaster. The indirect health effects are caused by unsafe and unhealthy conditions that develop due to the effects of disaster events that occur from anticipating the disaster. So I have here examples of a direct health effects. So example, drowning during a tsunami or injury caused by a flying debris during a hurricane or tornado. So these health effects typically occur during the event. So some indirect health effects may appear until several weeks, but while other direct indirect rather health effects might occur immediately after or even the prior of the disaster. So we have here samples of the type of disaster, the direct health effects, and indirect health effects. So I just included here some of the type of disasters that we experience or might experience in our country. So the first one is flood. So the direct health effects here is the drowning, injuries from submerged debris or structures. The indirect health effects here is from worsening of the chronic disease, carbon monoxide poisoning, waterborne disease, a vector-borne disease or a disease outbreak, or a mental health concerns. Another type of disaster is the earthquake. So injuries from the rock slides or collapsed buildings. So drowning from ensuing tsunami. Indirect health effects is almost the same with the flood. So from worsening of the chronic disease up to the mental health concerns. The next one is the volcanic eruption. So the suffocation from ash or toxic gases, injuries including burn, injuries from amad or lava flows, drowning from ensuing tsunami. So the indirect health effects is same with the other type of the disaster. So the next one is the public health concerns following a disaster. Here are the health concerns of the public. The first one is the potential spread of communicable disease or new illness or outbreaks, the damage to water systems, sanitation facilities, food supply systems, health infrastructure, and other basic infrastructure can increase the risk of an outbreak following a disaster. The next one is the gathering of a large number of displaced people and within the shelters or refugee camps. The next one is the chronic disease such as diabetes, asthma, and high blood pressure could worsen due to the disruption of routine health services, lack of access to prescription of drugs, or environmental conditions. So the following I mentioned are under the following effects of the disaster. So from medical to economic, social, environmental, political, and administration. So I guess before I will end my presentation, I would like to read this quote with you. We cannot stop natural disasters, but we can arm ourselves with knowledge and skills. So many lives wouldn't have to be lost if there was enough disaster preparedness. So thank you so much for listening.